Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up and get ready for a wild ride through the political jungle as we dive headfirst into the latest legal saga involving none other than the man, the myth, the legend himself, Donald J. Trump. Today, we're talking about a Supreme Court case so big, so monumental, that it could make or break the future of American politics as we know it. Our favorite orange-haired protagonist is back in the spotlight, and this time, he's taking on the highest court in the land. So grab your popcorn, sit back, and let's explore the ins and outs of Trump's Supreme Court case, where the only thing more shocking than the accusations is the fact that we're not even surprised anymore. I had Grok write me an intro. Did you guys like it? Hit that thumbs up if you guys like that Grok intro. We're just having fun on this NFL draft day where I am completely distracted by football, but trying to keep my eye on the things that are most important, what's going on in American politics and culture. Today we got this one here, and it's from the New York Post. What to know about Trump's high-stake presidential immunity case before the Supreme Court? Let's just go ahead and get into it. The last case the Supreme Court justices will hear of the 2023-2024 term is the most significant, as former President Donald Trump will argue that he enjoys immunity from prosecution on charges that he unlawfully conspired to remain in power after his loss to Joe Biden in the 2022 election, even though he left when he was supposed to. Apart from its effect on the 2024 election, the case carries far-reaching implications that could dramatically alter the scope of the presidential power for decades to come. Without presidential immunity, it would be impossible for a president to properly function, putting the United States of America in great and everlasting danger, Trump, 77, warned on Truth Social last week in one of his many posts about the case. Here's what you need to know before the oral arguments commence today. On August 1st of last year, special counsel Jack Smith lodged a 4-count criminal indictment against Trump, accusing him of making knowingly false claims of voter fraud and conspiring to prevent the tallying and certification of lawful electoral college votes. Lawyers for Trump, however, have argued that the 45th president was merely carrying out his duty as president to safeguard the election. By that theory, actions such as Trump's infamous January 2, 2021 phone call with Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, in which the president implored election officials to find the 11,780 votes needed to reverse his loss, were completely lawful. And the funny thing about that is the judge overseeing that case in Georgia, the RICO case, Judge McAfee, he actually threw out that phone call. The phone call is not even a part of the RICO case at all. That's the infamous phone call that basically started it all. The judge has deemed inadmissible to court. So now the Supreme Court's going to talk about it, I guess. But the text of the impeachment judgment clause confirms the original meaning of the executive vesting clause, i.e., that current and former presidents are immune from criminal prosecutions for official acts, Trump's attorneys wrote in a March brief. Smith's team has vehemently disputed that assertion, saying in their response that an alleged criminal scheme to overturn an election and thwarted the peaceful transfer of power to his lawfully elected successor, which he didn't do. He peacefully handed over the power when he was supposed to. It's just like the Democrats do. Trump's going to do this. Trump's going to do that. He won't leave peacefully. He's going to get rid of gay marriage. He's going to do all this stuff. And then he gets elected. He didn't get rid of gay marriage. He was technically the first president to ever be elected that was pro-gay marriage before he decided to even run. But now it's like they bought their own lies, completely ignored the truth that Trump did leave peacefully, and they're still saying that he tried to thwart the peaceful transfer of power to the lawfully elected successor. That's just completely horse crap. And they're saying that that's the example of conduct that should not be immunized, even if other conduct should be. You know, and this is a really slippery slope because there's a lot of presidents in the past, I guarantee you, are hoping that the Supreme Court actually sides with Trump, because if they don't side with Trump and they say that presidents can be held accountable for criminal charges, even to the things that they did as president, that they didn't have immunity, You know, Obama would be in prison right now for killing the American citizen in Yemen, and maybe George Bush would be in prison for sending us to war against Iraq for weapons of mass destruction that they never had. You know, all these things, all these excuses. And why would anybody in the future want to become president if they suddenly don't have any type of executive immunity for their actions as president? To me, it's pretty clear that the Supreme Court needs to come out and side with Trump here. But you never know in today's age, right? But Trump's legal team has warned that if the justices find in Smith's favor, future presidents would be significantly handicapped in carrying out their duties. Not to mention, they're going to have a huge backlog in prosecuting former presidents. A stark example of the ramifications of Trump's argument was demonstrated in January when the immunity question was argued before the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. Could a president who ordered SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival and is not impeached, would he be subject to criminal prosecution? Judge Florence Pan, a Biden appointee, asked at one point. If he were impeached and convicted first, Trump lawyer John Sauer replied. And that's the trick here, is you have to actually, because there is an actual procedure already in place, which says that you have to impeach the president first, that the House and the Senate have to impeach a president first, and then they can bring the charges. But you can't just charge them, because even though a person is not currently president, they were in the past, they can still be impeached. But the process is that has to come first before the charges and the conviction. But what the Democrats are trying to do is bypass that law, and it forced Trump to have to take it to the Supreme Court in order to have whatever president before him has had that presidential immunity bestowed upon him, right? Because Trump gets all the special treatment. But let's look at how the lower courts have ruled. So back in December, U.S. District Judge Tanya rejected Trump's immunity argument, ruling former president was not entitled to a lifelong get-out-of-jail-free pass. That's not at all what he is arguing. It's not a lifelong get-out-of-jail-free pass. It's immunity for the things that he did while he was president. Very, very distinct difference. The D.C. Appeals Court also ruled against Trump in February, saying his actions after the 2020 election were, if proven, an unprecedented assault on the structure of our government. He allegedly injected himself into a process in which the president has no role, which I would actually argue against that and say that the president would certainly have a role in ensuring and making sure that elections are fair and equal and 100% on the up and up. But call me crazy. Maybe that's supposed to be somebody else's responsibility. If it is, let me know in the comments. At the end of February, the Supreme Court announced it would take up Trump's appeal, putting Smith's case on hold until the immunity question is settled. Trump could win by losing, it says here. Many experts are skeptical that the former president will reverse his losing streak on the question, in the court's own words, of whether and if so, to what extent does a former president enjoy presidential immunity from criminal prosecution for conduct alleged to involve official acts during his tenure in office. Mariotti predicted that the wording of the question indicted the high court would qualify presidential immunity and be unlikely to let Trump completely off the hook. However, the former president may have done enough to ensure he never faces a day in court on the charges brought against him by Smith. The goal of the Trump campaign and the Trump legal team has been to delay as long as possible in the hope that as few of these go to trial before the election as they can. Williams College professor of political science Justin Crow told the Post Wednesday the trial before Judge Chutkan had been due to start March 4th, the day before Super Tuesday in the Republican primary. However, proceedings have been brought to a halt by the immunity challenge. Well, this is really funny to me because all the things they're talking about happened 3 years ago. But they waited until now because they wanted to make Trump look really bad right now as he is running his presidential campaign. That was their attempt. That's the Democrats trying to cheat an election, in my opinion. They had 3 years to bring these charges. Now Trump is doing everything he can legally to defend himself, and they're complaining because it's foiling their plan to have him spend all this time in court, which they hoped would hurt his presidential campaign. And it has. It's prevented him from campaigning in some places. And of course, it's costing him a lot of money and time and focus when he should be out there trying to let people know the good things that he'll do for the country if he's elected. Instead, he has to spend time in front of these corrupt judges and corrupt prosecuting district attorneys and stuff like that, which has forced his hand to take this to the Supreme Court now. So, sorry not sorry that Trump didn't just go with your plan and allow you guys to prosecute him freely, right? Bring bullcrap charges. You guys had 3 years and you didn't do anything. You waited till now. So if it gets delayed, that's your fault. You had plenty of time. Once the Supreme Court issues a ruling, which may not happen until late June, Chuckin will face a tight schedule to ensure the case is heard before the election, a rematch between Trump and Biden. See, and that's the thing. Why do they have to have the schedule? Why do they have to have it done before the election? You know what I mean? It's just such an obvious and blatant attempt to stop and prevent him from running a campaign like he needs to. The judges could send the case back to a lower court to iron out issues such as what constitutes official acts worthy of presidential immunity, delaying the case even further. If Trump defeats Biden and takes power on January 2nd, 2025, he could order the Justice Department to drop the cases against him, an unprecedented move, which the whole thing coming after him is completely an unprecedented move. So why would he not counter their unprecedented bullcrap attacks with an unprecedented move to beat their attacks? He wins, right? If he wins the election, he wins and they lose. It's not as though Trump would be violating the law by telling the DOJ to drop the case, Crow said. There might be people who are complaining, but it's because of a norm rather than a rule. Conscious of the race against the clock, Smith pleaded with the Supreme Court in December to leapfrog the D.C. Appeals Court and fast-track the immunity case, but the High Court declined to do so. And good for them. In my mind, Trump was just doing what he was actually allowed to do, which was investigate the election that happened while he was president. Pretty clear cut and dry to me, but notably, the Supreme Court decided not to consider a second argument by Trump's lawyers, that is impeachment by Congress in connection with the January 6, 2021 Capitol riot procedures and prosecution by Smith. Mariotti says that line was unlikely to succeed. Double jeopardy is a criminal law concept, he told the Post, and impeachment is a political exercise. And finally, is this case unprecedented? No. There have been at least 3 cases before the court involving former presidents that dealt with immunity questions in the past, according to Crow. Quote, there has been cases on this stuff before, and it's not as though the question of presidential immunity is a foreign one, Crow said. I think what's kind of remarkable about this is the scope of Trump's claims about the nature of his immunity. In the first case, 1974's U.S. versus Nixon, the court ruled unanimously that the 37th president had to turn over tape recordings and other subpoenaed material to a federal district court in connection with the Watergate scandal, turning aside Nixon's claim of executive privilege over the items. Nixon resigned the presidency 16 days later. 8 years after that, the court ruled in Nixon versus Fitzgerald that a president is entitled to absolute immunity from the civil courts of damages predicated on his official acts. In 1997, the court clarified its stance in Clinton versus Jones, finding that former Arkansas state government employee Paul Jones could sue then-President Bill Clinton for sexual harassment that allegedly took place prior to Clinton becoming president. Smith's team has also pointed to former President Gerald Ford's pardon of Nixon as a precedent, proving that a former president is subject to prosecution after leaving office. Trump is the first former or sitting U.S. president to face criminal charges, 88 of them spanning 4 indictments. Just goes to show how desperate the Democrats are to try to stop Trump. All of those indictments could have happened years ago. Instead, they waited till this year so that they could try to affect the election in a manner that hurts Trump and helps his opponent, which is Joe Biden. The former president is also facing raps in Manhattan, South Florida, and Georgia, which we're pretty much aware of. So personally, I think it's unfortunate that the New York judge basically told Trump that if he doesn't attend court in New York today in the Stormy Daniels hush money case that Trump will basically be thrown in jail. That's actually preventing Trump from being a part in person with this Supreme Court hearing. And in my opinion, I think it would actually be great if Trump skipped the New York trial, let the judge try to throw him in jail, and Trump actually show up to the Supreme Court hearing that is, in my opinion, much more important to the future of our country on if presidents, former presidents, can be charged and they don't have presidential immunity. Like I said, if Trump loses this, be ready for a litany of new charges coming in against other former presidents, I should say. And maybe even some against the current president, Biden. But that would all just remain to be seen. Anyways, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up there. Hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please hit that like button. Consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching to the end, and I'll see you guys in the next one.